In the previous episode, Xiao and Zunner discussed the two ancient gods jade. Zunner reminded Xiao once again that he must not expose the two ancient gods jade in his possession until he has absolute strength. Hearing this, Xiao nodded and realized that the reason the Hall of Soul captured his father was also related to this. Sutter continued to explain that the Xiao Clan was once considered a top faction on the Duel continent. At that time, the power of the Xiao Clan was difficult to compare, even with the Ice River Valley. At this point, surprise flashed in Xiao eyes as he listened to Zunner's words. He never expected that the Xiao Clan was once so brilliant in its time. Zunner went on to say that, unfortunately, as time passed, the Xiao Clan gradually declined. After that, some ancestors of the Xiao Clan could only leave the Central Plains and eventually settled in the Jama Empire. Following the decline over several generations, apart from a few members of the Xiao Clan, everyone, including the younger generation, was unaware of this. The ancestor of the Xiao Clan was truly a brilliant person. In a few hundred years, he stood at the pinnacle of the continent. There were only 4 people on the entire continent who could match him. The talent of that ancestor was something even the Gu Clan greatly admired. Under his leadership, the relationship between the Xiao Clan and the Gu Clan was very good. At that time, an alliance agreement was soon formed. Xiao, slightly surprised, then asked what kind of alliance agreement Sutter was referring to. Sutter continued to explain that the ancestor of the Xiao Clan once helped the Gu Clan. When he was near death, he entrusted the Gu Clan to protect the Xiao Clan and preserve the Xiao Clan's bloodline during critical times. This alliance agreement was quite effective for a short time after his death. However, as time passed and the Xiao Clan disappeared from the Central Plains, the alliance agreement gradually lost its effectiveness. One of the reasons Zunner went to the Xiao Clan at that time was because her father wanted Zunner to have a peaceful childhood, while another reason was that some people from the Gu Clan wanted Zunner to retrieve the two ancient god jade from the Xiao Clan. Xiao nodded, then pondered before finally remembering something and asked, "What was the name of the ancestor of the Xiao Clan?" Zunner smiled slightly and replied that the ancestor of the Xiao Clan was named Xiao Clan. Hearing this, Xiao nodded before Zunner continued speaking. She said that the ancient tomb of Xiao Clan is in the realm of the cave. However, this ancient tomb has mysterious powers, and the people from the Gu Clan cannot enter it despite some of them being very strong within the Gu Clan. They did not dare to break in randomly, especially because Xiao Clan had helped the Gu Clan. Therefore, no one has been able to enter this ancient tomb for many years. If Sutter guessed correctly, it is likely that only Xiao, a member of the Xiao Clan, can enter it. If Xiao has the chance to go to the Gu realm, then he might be able to see it. That way, Xiao might be able to gain something from there. Xiaoyan's expression became much more serious after hearing these words. Xiaoyan said that he naturally had to make a journey to the ancestral tomb. Once he had enough strength in the future, he would relocate the ancestral tomb to the Xiao Clan and have the descendants of the Xiao Clan worship it day and night. Zunner smiled, then reminded him that it would be best if Xiaoyan did not spread the news that he was a descendant of the elder Xiao Clan at this time. Although the Xiao Clan shone brightly on the Duel continent for a while, they also offended some powerful factions. Some of these powerful factions still exist today, and if they found out, they might bring some trouble to Xiao. Hearing this, Xiao nodded and then asked, "Do these factions have strength like the Ice River Valley?" Sutter shook her head, then explained that the factions in the Central Plains region cannot be summarized with the phrase 1 hall, 1 tower, 2 sects, 3 valleys, 4 pavilions. This is because the Central Plains region is truly vast and has many hidden factions. For example, my Gu Clan. At this moment, is everyone aware of the existence of the Gu Clan on the Duel continent? Some factions in the Central Plains that do not show themselves might secretly have strength no weaker than the Ice River Valley. Xiao nodded, realizing that what Zunner said seemed to be true. After that, Zunner continued to explain that she would not be able to stay long during this journey. Otherwise, Zunner would bring Xiao a lot of trouble. At this time, Xiao had to rely on himself for everything after Zunner left. Therefore, Zunner advised Xiao not to be reckless either. After saying this, Zunner gently caressed Xiaoyan's face. Hearing that Zunner was about to leave, Xiaoyan unconsciously tightened his grip and immediately hugged Zunner's slender waist. His eyes stared intently at Zunner's beautiful face, and then he asked, "Why can Xiaoyan go to the Gu realm to find Zunner?" Hearing this, Zunner smiled and gently replied, "As long as Xiaoyan has confidence, he can come anytime he likes, no matter what happens. What Xiaoyan needs to know is that Zunner will always stand by his side." Xiaoyan sighed in relief, then smiled before holding Zunner tightly and told her to remain calm. Xiaoyan knew how many challenges and how much trouble he would face when he headed to the Gu realm. He would never be reckless because he wanted them to know that Xunar's vision was the best. After that, the two were immersed in a moment of emotion until they finally gazed at each other. Xiaoyan stared intently at Xunar until fiery heat unconsciously emerged from his eyes. His hands immediately held Xunar's waist, which moved unconsciously. Then, Xiaoyan's mischievous hands slipped through Xunar's clothes, touching her jade-like smooth skin. Xunar's face instantly turned very hot as she felt Xiaoyan's unruly hands. Meanwhile, without realizing it, evil fire in Xiaoyan's lower abdomen suddenly surged. Finally, Xiaoyan abruptly pressed his lips against Xunar's, who was completely resigned at that moment. Xunar could only remain silent at Xiaoyan's actions. Then, Xiaoyan noticed Xunar standing still like a statue. Silently, he began to undo Xunar's green clothes. Just as Xiaoyan was beginning to enjoy the beautiful sight, a sudden cough was heard from the doorway. Following the cough, an old voice immediately followed, saying that he had something to discuss with Miss Xun'er. On the other hand, the old man's cough sounded like thunder in Xiaoyan's ears, startling him instantly. Xiaoyan quickly suppressed the evil fire in his lower abdomen, while Xun'er hurriedly steadied herself. After that, Xun'er mentioned that the bloodline within her body had not fully awakened yet. She couldn't engage in any relations at this time, or the consequences would be severe. Wait until we meet again, and then we can plant the beans in the garden. Surprise flickered in Xiaoyan's eyes as he heard the soft, mosquito-like voice beside him. After that, Xun'er quickly left the room after saying the words that shocked Xiaoyan. Meanwhile, Xiaoyan gently clenched his fist as he watched Xun'er's graceful figure before finally sighing. On the other side, Xun'er asked the old man she called Old Lin, "What are you both doing?" Hearing this, the white-haired man immediately asked, "Did Miss Xun'er and Xiaoyan not do anything strange?" A bright red blush appeared once more on Xun'er's face, and she angrily retorted, "What nonsense are you thinking?" With that, Xun'er hurriedly went to her room, leaving the two old men who had just spoken with her. Watching Xun'er leave, the old man in white clothes observed her from afar. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and then said, "It seems there is no change in Miss Xun'er's aura, so she didn't do it." The old man beside him sighed and said, "That's because they arrived just in time." Meanwhile, after calming his mind, Xiaoyan took out a golden scroll given by Xun'er. Inside were the last 3 seals of the God Seal skill, and Xiaoyan was very interested in this skill. According to the records, if he mastered all 5 seals, his power would be comparable to a Tian class Dao technique. Though often unclear about the power of Tian class Dao techniques, he could get some clues from the 5-ring flame expelling technique that could defeat Tianzi and Bing Swan, along with the trio of experts from Ice River Valley. After that, Xiaoyan put the scroll back into his storage ring. Following his conversation with Xun'er, Xiaoyan had gained a more complete understanding of the importance of power. Xiaoyan murmured that Du's techniques could be practiced anytime, while increasing his strength was the most important thing for now. His expression gradually turned serious. Then, his hands suddenly pulled at his clothes, revealing the black vortex of the demon poison spot. With Xiaoyan's current strength, it wasn't difficult for him to fully refine the demon poison spot. Given Xiaoyan's body's capacity, it should be possible to completely absorb the vast amount of pure Dao Qi contained within it. In other words, resolving the demon poison that had troubled Xiaoyan for years was certainly achievable. Finally, after steadying himself, Xiaoyan immediately began to purify the demon poison spot. The jade flame within Xiaoyan's body ignited. After that, he fiercely attacked the demon poison spot. The process took quite a long time, and without realizing it, 3 days had passed. A hard-to-describe sense of comfort spread throughout Xiaoyan's body, and he finally opened his eyes. He murmured, "It seems I've now broken through to 3-star Tuzong." After that, Xiaoyan looked down at his chest, where the demon poison spot was not yet fully refined. At this moment, Xiaoyan could still see many small black spots. Seeing this, Xiaoyan thought that his body was in its best condition. It would be a pity to give up at a moment like this. Then, after a bit of contemplation, Xiaoyan continued the process of refining the demon poison spot within his body. The remaining demon poison spot couldn't withstand Xiaoyan's refinement. Within half a day, the small black spots completely disappeared from Xiaoyan's chest. Only then did the demon poison spot that Seed, Bai Yan, had implanted in Xiaoyan's body completely vanish. At this moment, Xiaoyan could feel the abundant energy waves filling the room. Xiaoyan thought that, with the support of this energy, he should be able to reach the 4-star Tuzong level. Meanwhile, on the other side, over 10 black shadows, accompanied by bloody winds, flew across the sky. More than 500 kilometers from Yi City, many figures on 4-winged beasts with a single sharp horn on their heads were heading towards Yi City. A few figures in dark purple clothing stood on the heads of these single-horned beasts, and a faint aura quietly rippled from their bodies. A man in dark purple robes respectfully reported to the commander named Ling Quan that based on the information they obtained, the young lady should be in Yi City, in the Pill region. Ling Quan was a familiar name because he was the commander of the submerged Hayton army who had a conflict with Zioyan when he took Zunner away from the academy. In response to the report, Ling Quan immediately asked if the trash from the Xiao Clan was also there. In response to the question, the man providing the information nodded promptly. Ling Quan clenched his fist and murmured that he had warned that little trash back then to keep his distance from the young lady. It seemed Ling Quan would need to teach Xiao a real lesson to make his words heard. Meanwhile, on the other side, two beautiful figures were sitting across from each other playing chess. Zunner and Xiao Yixian were chatting while playing chess, waiting for Xiaoyan's arrival. Before long, Zunner mentioned that she had heard Xiaoyan mention Xiao Yixian's name at Jianan Academy. She said that Xiao Yixian was a good friend of his. Hearing this, Xiao Yixian paused for a moment before finally saying that Xiaoyan was also her friend. Zunner smiled gently and then asked if it was true that Xiao Yixian was just a friend. Xiao Yixian immediately lifted her eyes and remained silent for quite a while after hearing Zunner's question. Seeing Xiao Yixian not answering, Zunner's hand slightly trembled before she finally said that she would be leaving soon and would have to trouble Xiao Yixian to take care of Xiaoyan in the future. Xiao Yixian, expressionless, immediately said that as long as she was alive, nothing would happen to Xiaoyan. Zunner sighed in relief and then smiled before finally standing up, her expression suddenly turning mysterious. Zunner quickly lifted her head after sensing an energy presence in the sky. Xiao Yixian also turned as Zunner sensed the same energy. Her expression instantly became serious, and she asked if it was the Ice River Valley or the Hall of Soul. Just after Xiao Yixian asked, a man in black robes suddenly appeared and said it should be the submerged Black Army. Zunner shook her head with an unhappy expression and murmured that these people truly followed her like shadows. The old man in black clothing laughed coldly and said there was no choice. The submerged Black Army was controlled by the Elders Council of the Gu Clan. Those old men wanted the young lady Zunner to stay in the Gu realm forever. Soon after, more than 10 figures rushed down from the four-winged single-horned beasts. They had appeared in the air right where Zunner was. Ling Quan immediately cupped his hands and bowed towards Zunner. Zunner's eyebrows instantly furrowed vertically, and she asked why they were all here. Ling Quan smiled at Zunner before finally saying that the elders were worried the young lady might get hurt outside. Therefore, they ordered Ling Quan to bring the young lady back to the Gu realm. Hearing this, the old man with white hair immediately laughed and said that with the two of them protecting the young lady, what could happen to her? Don't tell him that Ling Quan, a young man who is only at the 5-star Du Zone level, can protect the young lady. In response, Ling Quan clasped his hands and said that this was an order from the elders, and he could not refuse it. Then, Ling Quan looked at Zunner and said that the elders were anxious this time. Miss Zunner had even exchanged blows with the Hall of Soul during her journey. If they realized Zunner's identity and did something strange, the Gu Clan would fall into chaos. Therefore, the elders had given strict orders this time. If they failed to bring the young lady back, some of them would be punished when they all returned. Hearing this, Zunner pondered for a moment before finally shifting her gaze to a tightly closed room, then said that she would return after 2 more days. Ling Quan immediately furrowed his brows upon hearing this. Then his eyes also looked toward the room that Zunner had just glanced at. A cold expression flashed in his eyes as he smiled and said that there were rumors that the young master of the Xiao Clan was also here. Now Ling Quan wanted to know the whereabouts of young master Xiaoyan. Additionally, it had been several years since he last saw him at Jianan Academy, and he wanted to know what level young master Xiaoyan had currently reached. The expressions of Zunner and Xiao Yixian in the stone pavilion became somewhat displeased when they heard the subtle mockery in Ling Quan's words. Shortly after, laughter was heard along with the door opening in the room they had just been looking at. Xiaoyan immediately stepped out and said that it was Commander Ling Quan. He apologized for being late to meet Ling Quan. However, Commander Ling Quan had only reached the 5-star Duzong level despite training for years. This really surprised Xiaoyan. Hearing Xiaoyan's mockery, Ling Quan's expression immediately turned ugly. He did not expect the trash that previously didn't even have the qualifications to speak in front of him would dare to mock him in such a manner. Did this person think he would do anything with the young lady protecting him? The coldness in Ling Quan's eyes grew more intense before he immediately appeared in the courtyard. Meanwhile, a majestic aura slowly spread from Xiaoyan's body as he appeared, making Ling Quan gloomy. He wondered if the boy had reached the Duzong level. Ling Quan's eyes were filled with disbelief, especially when he realized that Xiao now had the power of a 4-star Duzong. Ling Quan's expression immediately turned serious as he said, "I didn't expect the Xiao Clan, which had declined so much, to produce a genuine elite at the Duzong level. It's truly surprising." However, at this moment in Ling Quan's eyes, Xiao seemed a bit different from the Xiao of that time. Hearing the taunt, Xiao smiled and then replied that in his eyes, Ling Quan was nothing. A density gradually appeared on Ling Quan's face due to Xiaoyan's harsh words. His gloomy eyes stared at Xiaoyan as killing intent flashed between them. Meanwhile, on the other side, Xiaoyan's expression remained unchanged despite Ling Quan's cold gaze. Noticing this, Xunder's face altered slightly before she finally rebuked Ling Quan. After being harshly scolded by Xunder, even Ling Quan did not dare to underestimate her. He hurriedly withdrew his gaze, bowed, and cupped his hands towards Xunder. However, at this moment, the killing intent in his eyes intensified as he lowered his head. Meanwhile, Xunder pondered for a moment before Xiaoyan asked if she was going to leave. Xunder, who had just been thinking, nodded her head immediately when Xiaoyan asked. After that, Xunder took a few steps and stopped right in front of Xiaoyan, her warm hands adjusting Xiaoyan's slightly disheveled clothes. She gently said that she couldn't stay outside for too long this time. Otherwise, it would bring trouble to Xiaoyan. After Xiaoyan resolved his issues, he should have the ability to come to the Gu clan. Until that time, Xunder would wait for Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan's eyes focused on the girl in front of him, whose beautiful face showed some attachment. Xiaoyan remained silent for a moment before nodding slowly and asking Xunder to wait for him. Then, Xiaoyan, not caring about Ling Quan around them, immediately grabbed Xunder's slender waist and embraced her. A faint and bright blush instantly appeared on Xunder's face as Xiaoyan hugged her. On the other side, Ling Quan truly felt his emotions and demanded Xiaoyan to release the young lady at once. The jealousy in his heart almost overshadowed his sanity. He always viewed Xunder as a goddess in his heart and did not allow anyone else to sully her. Seeing Ling Quan's actions, the elder in black immediately scolded him, saying that in his position, personal matters concerning the young lady were not something he could shout about loudly. Ling Quan's face trembled immediately after being reprimanded by the black-clothed elder. He quickly said that he knew his offense. He took a deep breath, and the redness in his eyes gradually faded, but his eyes remained dark and cold as he looked at Xiaoyan. Meanwhile, Xunder ignored Ling Quan's behavior. She slowly stepped back and ordered all her members to leave immediately after getting ready. She turned to Ling Quan and said it was time for them to go. Ling Quan took a deep breath after hearing Xunder's command to leave. His eyes were truly dark and vicious as he glanced at Xiaoyan before slowly shaking his head. He told Xunder that the young lady could leave first. Ling Quan still had some tasks to complete on the elder's orders. Xunder's expression changed after hearing Ling Quan's words. She suddenly turned around, her cold eyes focused on Ling Quan. Xunder immediately said that she had ordered Ling Quan to leave at once. Ling Quan remained stubborn and continued shaking his head. The black-clothed elder's face gradually darkened and grew grim until he finally said that Ling Quan had indeed become bolder. The two elders stepped forward simultaneously, and a terrifying aura immediately enveloped Ling Quan's body. Ling Quan instantly knelt on one knee under the pressure of the two elders. Seeing this, Xunder immediately ordered the two elders to capture Ling Quan and bring him back. The two nodded and then hurried towards Ling Quan, but their steps soon came to a halt. They were shocked to see the blood-red jade token that Ling Quan had taken out. Ling Quan then spoke to Xunder, explaining that it wasn't because he refused to obey Xunder's orders. Rather, he had received strict orders from the elders. The elders had given him serious instructions. If he encountered clan members during this journey, he was to invite them back to the Gu clan for a gathering. If the other party refused, he had the right to use force to bring them back. Therefore, Xiaoyan had to comply and go with him to the Gu clan. Ling Quan's words immediately turned the atmosphere there silent. Xiaoyan's eyes shifted to Ling Quan, a coldness flashing in them. On the other hand, Xunder took a gentle breath and then told Ling Quan that he could leave with her. If Ling Quan complied, she would treat it as if nothing had happened. Ling Quan remained stubborn, shaking his head, and said that these were orders from the elders. He had no right to disobey them. In response, Xunder's expression gradually calmed. Confronting Ling Quan's words, she softly said that she would remember this issue. Ling Quan's face changed slightly upon hearing Xunder's gentle tone. Ling Quan's expression became fiercer as he turned to Xiaoyan, saying that all of this stemmed from the little trash from the Xiao Clan. Because of the trouble caused by this trash, Ling Quan had to risk offending the young lady. It seemed he must now give this trash an unforgettable lesson. A hoarse and cold voice slowly came from Ling Quan's mouth as he asked if Xiao would follow him or if he had to force him. Responding to Ling Quan's anger, Xiao only smiled and asked if Ling Quan thought he was the same as before. Ling Quan laughed immediately and said that it seemed Xiao truly refused to return to the Gu clan with him. Xiao smiled and nodded, realizing that Ling Quan was looking for an excuse to attack him. Ling Quan stepped forward with a surging aura and said that today he would show Xiao that, regardless of his improvements, he was just an ant in the eyes of the Gu clan. In response, Xun'er immediately told Xiao that he didn't need to hold back. Was Xiao planning to fight alone or together? Xiaoyan's eyes immediately shifted to the 10 figures following Ling Quan. At that moment, the truly enraged Ling Quan said for Xiao to stop acting arrogant in front of him. Facing Xiao himself would be enough. After saying this, a silver light extended and transformed into a long spear. He then shot into the sky before finally saying that he wanted to see if the trash from the Xiao clan was qualified to act arrogantly. Xiao smiled slightly and a killing intent covered his eyes. His body moved and he was already in the sky before a large sword appeared. The coldness in Ling Quan's eyes surged. Xiao appeared in the sky, a long spear in his hand vibrating and a bright lightning light shining on it. Immediately, the spear vibrated and took the shape of a dragon shooting towards Xiao. Xiao calmly stared at the spear shooting towards him, showing no intention of avoiding the attack. A green jade flame slowly surged on Xiaoyan's large sword before it was swung with great force. The clash of metal created sparks flying in all directions. Both figures were shaken, taking several steps back as they collided. At the same time, Ling Quan's expression subtly changed as he felt vibrations from his spear, causing his palm to feel slightly numb. Soon, Ling Quan's body moved before finally disappearing, and he was now right in front of Xiao. He swung his spear, causing a flash of light to shoot towards a fatal point on Xiaoyan's body. The Thunder Snake Dance technique produced many spear shadows that appeared in the air. However, Xiaoyan's body turned into an illusion. At this moment, Xiaoyan's body shifted, avoiding all the sharp spear points from Ling Quan. A cold glint passed through Ling Quan's eyes as he observed Xiaoyan's mysterious agility. His palm suddenly struck the spear handle, and the sudden explosive force caused the thunder spear to shoot out like an arrow. The space was slightly distorted as the long spear shot out rapidly like lightning. However, a fiery hand emerged just as the spear was about to hit Xiaoyan's chest. This fiery hand forcefully grabbed the spear and halted its forward momentum. After that, Xiaoyan suddenly clenched his hand, breaking the long spear instantly. For the first time, Ling Quan's expression revealed a drastic change. After his long spear was destroyed, Ling Quan's body quickly retreated. At the same time, his hands immediately formed a seal with lightning speed. The technique Ling Quan used was a hand seal familiar to Xiaoyan. It was the divine seal skill that Xiaoyan had also learned. Xiaoyan coldly laughed in his heart before finally unleashing Skyfire 3 Mysterious Changes' first change. With his current strength, using the Skyfire 3 Mysterious Changes was something he could achieve almost instantly. Soon after, Xiaoyan's aura suddenly surged. His power now reached a level equivalent to Ling Quan's strength. His body moved instantly as a silver light flashed. After that, he appeared in front of Ling Quan like a ghost. Xiaoyan's speed truly shook Ling Quan's heart. Soon, the seal in Ling Quan's hands was quickly completed, and he released the technique Open Mountain Seal. Instantly, a surge of tremendous energy shot towards Xiaoyan. On the other side, green jade flames surged, and Xiaoyan's powerful punch was immediately released. Without any fancy movements, Xiaoyan's punch cruelly struck Ling Quan's hand just as it was being thrown forward. Xiaoyan was certainly familiar with the Open Mountain Seal technique. Therefore, Xiaoyan knew about the release point of its power and the weaknesses of the attack. This punch also managed to make contact with a point on Ling Quan's palm, where his power was most concentrated. Instantly, an explosion occurred with flames shooting into the sky, and a slight cracking sound emerged from Ling Quan's wrist. At this moment, cold sweat immediately covered Ling Quan's forehead. However, Ling Quan's mental strength was quite impressive at this moment. His feet quickly stepped back after being cruelly countered by Xiaoyan. Before long, his other hand formed a seal. However, before the seal was fully formed, a fiery hand suddenly appeared from nowhere and firmly grasped Ling Quan's hand. Xiaoyan shook his head, his eyes full of pity, before saying, Ling Quan's spear technique is truly extraordinary, but his hand seals form too slowly, and his Dao Ki is too thin. At this moment, Ling Quan is far worse than Xiao expected, and it's truly disappointing. Therefore, Xiao will give Ling Quan an evaluation of one word, weak.